appropriately, he's putting the phone in the stack of Warhammer books.
All right.
Saga of the Beast, buddy.
Okay. Everybody say something for sound check.
Sound check. Sound check.
Testing 1, 2.
Sound check.
See, Farsight, don't
Sound
panic.
check.
Chris's computer is fucked up, so that's why he looks
No,
weird.
just my microphone. Why do I look terrible?
The angle's a little odd, but you're fine.
Okay.
The boomer angle.
I just shaved because I realized that I hadn't shaved this morning. So I went, I'm going on YouTube. I need to shave.
Okay.
Really?
better?
Custodian of Sound is happy with the sound, so we're good to go.
Sweet.
Okay, good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for Warhammer 40k from the Great White North. Today's show is episode 188. Feels like we've been in the 80s for quite some time. It's going to be all about 40k traps as well as prep for an RTT that we're going to, which will be our second RTT of this wonderful ninth edition. As usual, I'm your host, Chris, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Darren.
And joining us live all the way from Gatineau, we have...
Hey, this is Francois.
And from Petawawa...
Hey, it's Nick.
Welcome, guys. It's been a while. It's been a few weeks, but welcome to the cast. So what have you guys been up to? Nick, you had some games in?
Well, yeah, you, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, you took the 2.5-hour drive down to my place, and we repped like 3 games that day, had some good meals, and yeah, it was a good time. Yeah.
Good times. It was fun. Yeah, it was kind of interesting to drive 5 hours in a day. I was like, oh, this is what Nick feels like all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Got a little taste of what I go through every time I'm driving either to Ottawa or your place to go play games. No, I appreciate that you came down, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got 3 practice games, which is pretty good for one day. That's respectable, I think. And didn't go well for the sisters. Went 1 and 2. So,
I mean, I think it's fine, right? Each one. Worried. Yeah. Like when you change your list, the last list of yours, that's when I started to sweat and you kicked my ass. So I'm a little nervous about that now for the weekend.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I started off with a list that I've never ran before, which is cool. I just took 60 sisters with about 18 meltaguns, just loaded in. Yeah. And it was a very close game. It was a lot of fun. But those damn 1,000 Suns Marines that pair really well. What are the little crawlers called?
Mephitic Blight Haulers.
Yeah. Do you know what those do, Francois?
I'm sure at one point I knew, but I don't remember right now.
Yeah, so when they're within 7 inches of a unit, you get an extra -1 AP.
Oh, right. They give cover to everything. Yeah.
Well, no. So they naturally give cover to Death Guard infantry.
Oh, okay.
But there's a new strat from War of the Spider you can pop that units within 7 inches of the Mephitic Blight Haulers suffer an extra -1 AP to attacks allocated to them.
Okay,
but
that I did not know.
Yeah, it's one of the few strats in that book, and I checked the FAQ, and it doesn't specify Death Guard.
Yeah, well, but so the ultimate, my catch was I have 60 sisters. They ignore -1, -2, and then I put them in cover, and then he's like, nope, -3.
Yeah,
-3 is so much worse for the sisters battle.
And Rubric Marines go brrr.
That's a lot of shots. Yeah, a lot of shots.
Yeah. That sounds.
And then Rubrics actually surprised me, man. They really did, because I put in Eviscerate. I put everything into those things, and they do not die.
Man, everybody thinks I'm crazy, and I've been playing Rubrics for years now. I brought them to the first team tournament in Sudbury. This is 2-3 years ago. And they weren't that good then, but they've just been progressively getting better, and especially with Psychic Awakening. Nobody believes me. I'm like, all right, man, I'll bring my Rubrics. And they're like, I can't kill these effing things. What's going on here? And
crazy like a fox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, it was crazy back then, though, right?
Yeah, back then it was. Yeah, then it was crazy. Now it's less. Yeah.
Now I think people are starting to spam them. I think when Nurglings go away, you'll see a lot more of them.
Yeah.
Who knows though? It's so up in the air. They have a
weakness, though. They do have weaknesses. Mortal Wounds is their big weakness.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I don't dish out a lot of them, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was neat. It was actually really neat because I brought probably like 5,000 points of sisters to your house, and it was
Yeah.
literally like we'd play a game, and then I'd be like, okay, let's take all this other random crap, right? And
Yeah,
then
we
we'd play
talk
another
about
game.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really
I
cool
mean,
to
the
be
first.
like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say it was really neat to be like, okay, right away, right, instant feedback, change that unit out, and then the list evolved. And then the last game, as you said, I took out the exorcist. I put the exorcist back in because I had taken them out. I think Francois was the one who was like, "Why they're so scary?" But I took them out and I played with them, and then now I put them back in. They're pretty good.
No, it was great to be able to help like iterate your list over those 3 games because I thought I was going to change mine up, but I was like, I was already pretty settled on my list. I just wanted to get reps in. So I was like, okay, now this is a great opportunity to help you with yours. So we played the first game, and that actually was a close game. We're talking what,
3
two or
points.
3 points? Yeah. And then the second game, so you made some changes. You're like, this one's more aggressive. You said it's like less defensive. So let's see, maybe I'll put up a bigger fight. I took a bold move at the beginning of the game that really paid off. Like I just put my rubrics in front of you and I'm like, okay, deal with it. And they just, started dishing it out. And like by the time you could get rid of them, I'd already had most of the board. So we re-racked. And then you put in the Exorcist and you comboed that with the While We Stand, We Fight, knowing that like I don't have a lot to deal with. T8 ignores AP1 and 2, right?
6 up,
So
feel no pain.
yeah,
6 up,
yeah,
ball. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that was one of the big changes for me. Like not only can you threat the mid board with their shots, so I can't be so cavalier all the time, but now that's 15 points you're going to get for free if I can't go deal with it. And like, still getting through Repentia, Celestine, the Triumph, all the sisters, like that's a lot to get through before you get to the Exorcist.
Yeah, it was
So
really an
you won
interesting
that one
day.
a bit more handedly, actually. That was like a 15 point or 17 point win to you.
I would say so. The second game, yeah, you basically beat the crap out of me. There's nothing I could do. I don't think I ever was ahead. And then the third game, I felt like I was ahead the whole game. And then
Mhm.
you did a couple gambles late
Yeah,
in the game, and it was like, oh, if these pay off, right, it could be a tight game. But they
yeah,
didn't pay off,
yeah.
which is good for me, I guess. So I guess we'll move over to Francois. What have you been up to? You played a
Oh,
couple
I
games,
have
eh?
been painting white scars like a madman. I think I painted 1,000 points in the last week, and now, as of yesterday, I have my 2,000 point list painted and ready to go.
So, and I think you started 2 weeks ago, right? Like
So
3 weeks ago.
I painted the first 1,000 points roughly when I got my Indominus box, and then I didn't touch them again until last week. So over 2 weeks, but there was a big break in the middle.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good. A whole White
Uh,
Scars Army.
yeah, and they
Yeah.
look good, if I say so myself. I'm really happy.
So I guess we'll kind of touch on that in the prep list, but people will know you as the Ultramarines player. I think you played Iron Hands. You play.
I play.
What else do you play?
I play
What other
everything.
chapters?
So for Space Marines, I only have the 3 chapters. I have Iron Hands,
Okay.
Ultramarines, and White Scars. And because I am special and crazy, they're all painted in the proper colors, in the proper chapter colors. So I have 2,000 points of White Marines and 2,000 points, actually more than that, like 3,000 points of Iron Hands Marines and like 4,000 points of Blue Marines. But, there's not that much overlap in the units the chapters want to take, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, well, you embrace the change. It's not like you're playing aggressors that are white. You're playing a very different army. So I kind of wanted you to just quickly go through your list and your army because I've never seen a list like that. And
Yeah, so for the
apparently
Whites,
it screws Custodes up pretty bad, right?
well, today I had a practice game against Charlie's Custodes, and it went really well. The list is centered around stacking the wounding buffs that White Scars can do, because you take Kasaro Khan, which is their special character. He has a +1 to wound bubble, and +1 to wound is one of the best buffs you can get in the game. So you're basically mimicking Blood Angels by having him. And then you take a chaplain with a jump back in this case because you want him to keep up. And he has the White Scar specific litany, which is a reroll to wound. So you're getting the +1 and the reroll in that bubble. And it's not expensive. Kusaro Can is only 110 points. The chaplain with the jump pack is like, 140-ish, something like that. And then you add on to that 25 assault intercessors, 10, 10, and 5. Honestly, I think if you had even more, it'd be better, but I got tired of painting intercessors, so instead I went for the high quality bodies with 2 units of blade guard and 3 units of the bikers. Then after that, the new primaries bikers, I mean. Then after
Outriders,
that,
correct? Is it
Outriders, thank
Outriders?
you. I
Yeah.
blanked for a second.
Oh,
Then after
I've
that,
been going nuts with Marines this week, fluff wise. So
you do need a little bit of anti-tank shooting. Despite how good the melee is, I think you need a little bit of range. So for my range, I put in 2 units of Eradicators, the new Primaris and Meltadudes, and a Relic Contemptor Dreadnought, which is probably what I would change in the list. But he looks cool, and he's a mixed loadout with a fist and a dual last cannon, and then 2 Impulsors. And what you do is you put Kusaro Khan and 5 of the Assault Intercessors into one Impulsor, the 6 Blade Guard into the other. Then the Jump Chaplain can keep up with them, and you just lodge him in between the 2 so he's safe. You White Scars outflank the 2 units of 10 Assault Intercessors, and that gives you, you basically play KG with all that until turn 3, and that gives you a massive melee punch, and you're fast enough to dance around the enemy for 2 turns and then hit them all really hard.
So you already had 2 of those dreads painted for Ultramarines. Are you saying you painted another one?
Yes. And actually, I got the White Scar specific Forge World model. So he's got the plume on the head and the stuff on the chest.
Man.
Yeah.
no, I admire that, man. I'm thinking about doing something similar with Dark Angels and Ultramarines.
Yeah, I really like the list. It's fast. It hits like a truck. It's very different from what I'm used to playing. So it's nice. It's fresh.
Yeah. Oh, cool stuff. So, Darren, you been doing anything interesting?
I've been working. I've been riding the bicycle a lot, and I've been avoiding painting my bust and assembling and priming Harlequins. So that's basically what I've been up to.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna move in a bit. A lot of huge announcements came in this week from GW. So did you guys have a chance? So I know, Francois was like, "Oh, I'm sick and tired of painting intercessors." Well, there's more types of intercessors for you now, man.
Yep.
So what do you think of those heavy support intercessors or heavy intercessors?
I mean, it really depends. I think it's going to come down to exactly how they're pointed. The power level points to them being pointed very, shall we say, aggressively. So probably worth taking for some chapters.
Aggressively, as in they'll be pointed appropriately?
I mean, they're probably going to be good.
Price to sell, shall we say?
Price to sell. I think for some chapters, like Ultramarines, that they don't care that they're moving and shooting with that special heavy bolter they get, they'd probably be really good. Maybe for Iron Hands, just because extra point of toughness, extra wound on your troops, especially if you do that thing with Pharaohs and the Apothecary. I don't know if the Codex will nerf that or not, but as it stands right now, that might be a little interesting. To play those. I think for some chapters like White Scars, they're not interesting at all, but that's okay. Some units work for some chapters and don't for others.
Yeah, so you don't have to buy 9 of them, you just have to buy 3 units, right?
Exactly. Well, they're troops. You can buy how many as you want.
The other thing that was interesting is they came out with a multi-part Eradicator unit, and I was very, I don't know, it was intriguing that they added a multi-melta to it now that we know what the multi-melta rules are going to be. And I was like, that's just what Eradicators need, is a multi-melta. So now when they're sitting in that building at 24 inches, they're shooting 4 melta shots and 4 multi-melta shots.
Yeah. For some chapters like Ultramarines, they're going to be really strong because they can move that multi-melta and not take the penalty. Or if you have a chapter master nearby, I guess it doesn't matter if you take the penalty for any chapter. For something like White Scar, where you can advance and shoot with no penalty with your assault weapons, you probably want to keep them base, because then the heavy is kind of wasted if you advance it in White Scars. But yeah, that's definitely a tasty option, and it's going to come down to how many points they tack on to add those 2 extra shots that you're going to get. Well, those 2 melta shots you're going to get.
Well, because right now it's hard to tell because their entire cost is kind of in the model.
Yeah.
So you actually don't know the difference between the model and the Meltagun, and I'm assuming the models will be more expensive because they're the ones that have the shoot twice rule. So, you're looking at probably an extra 20 points, so it's probably like 10 to 20 points more, right? But
yeah, if it's 20 points more, it's probably something you want to think about. If it's 10 points more, for some chapters, you auto-take it, right? So it really depends on how you price it.
Yeah, especially if you did, if you took some more long-range units, you could force somebody to come into you. You could use them kind of stationary, which is pretty cool. Anything else from the new Marine League before we get to the weapons? What did you think of the new characters? Or
Well, I mean, there's another captain with a bespoke gun
Yeah.
that probably no one's going to use. So that one doesn't excite me so much.
yeah,
I want them to release that chaplain they previewed ages ago now. Well, ages like a month ago now. I want that bike chaplain.
How about
That's what
those
I want.
speeders?
Yeah,
They look
they're super
cool.
there is actually something I don't like about it.
Yeah, you probably
Go
the
ahead,
same
Nick.
that I'm good. No, you say it, but I think it's the same thing.
I don't like the guy in the turret with just his head sticking up out of the turret. I was like, come on, he should be. It just looks silly. Like at that
Well,
point, just put like a periscope or like a camera and have him inside the thing.
And like, I imagine maybe the noise canceling effects of those helmets must be the best the Imperium has to offer, because he's literally his head is between the barrel of two guns that are like the caliber must be 1,000 times crazier than a 50 cal. Like if you did that in the real life, your like ears would just blow out.
Yeah, and if you had like rockets or something, it's like the pressure would just like suck your brain out your ears.
Yeah, yeah. If you actually shoot an 84 millimeter like gun, like a recoilless rifle, like just being in the vicinity of that, it just sucks everything out of you. Like if you have nasal congestion, it'll suck it all out. And if you're behind the gun, you could die. It's literally how aggressive those things are.
Yeah, and he's just like, I'll just stick my head through the top,
Yeah,
right?
Though that and that little attack bike, Primaris attack bike, tells me that the sculptors at GW, they need to get like an army vet or somebody to consult and be like, no, that would never. Like, I know this is a fictional sci-fi universe, but like, let's get it together here. You're not gonna have a guy sit between the two gun barrels.
Just his head.
Yeah, just his head poking out. Like if
I could imagine an easy conversion though, where you kind of close that as a canopy or something.
Well, they must have a piece.
You just cut his head off, and it's fine.
Or just don't put the head there. Yeah.
Or maybe they include a piece as just the cover.
I wonder how big they are compared to old speeders.
They look big because there's 3 Space Marines in there, right?
They're large. 3 Primaris Marines, yeah.
I mean, of course, we don't have like perspective because they weren't pictured next to something else, as far as I know. But just looking at the image by itself, they look like they're massive pieces of kit.
Yeah, like I kind of imagine it like that, like a little, like impulsor size. Mm-hmm. I definitely like them, and I like.
Thank God that Chris made a sign with his fingers on the podcast.
People can see it. Sorry, I made like a square box. That size.
Yeah.
For all those, most of the people can't see them, but yeah. I like it. I like that it's, because if you read a lot of the Horus Heresy stuff, Space Marines, it almost feels like they fell back in technology since the Horus Heresy. And you're like, okay, well, now they're kind of coming back in certain ways anyway. And it's nice to see. And I think it kind of fits the theme. Like if you have impulsors, you have repulsors, it kind of fits that look if you want to go all Primaris. And I've had a complete change of heart with I've been going crazy with like Space Marine novels and fluff the last couple weeks, and like I've had a very change in heart in Primaris Marines now. Just to they make more sense, I guess. They've kind of flushed them out enough in the universe that you kind of feel bad for them in some ways, and you like them in other ways. So
I think
I'm over it.
I think they're a cool. I think they're a cool addition. I think gameplay wise, I don't want to dwell on this, but gameplay wise, I think. It is getting a little bloated, the line. Like, I think the codex is going to be 90-some data sheets, unique data sheets. Yeah. And anyways, it just gets impossible to... and maybe they don't really care, right? It's their premier army, so they has to be good. That's
easy,
fine.
Just squat.
They need to get rid of the old Marines. They need to get rid of the old Marines.
But it's just the layers
There's going to be people with pitchforks waiting for me outside, but I'm saying it now. Just in 2 years, get rid of all the old Marines.
We've been saying that for a long time. They need to get rid of the old Marines.
But the fluff doesn't match that. That's the thing, right? Most chapters took them, but only certain chapters can actually create new ones.
Right? I even see the possibility of if your Primaris line, like before the Primaris line was like an addition to the Firstborn line, right? It's like you can add a couple units. Now that line is getting so fleshed out, I don't see why they can't do 2 separate codexes. Like they're 2 separate armies, right? Because now
they mixed them in the fluff.
Well, yeah, but now they're starting to see.
But there's already like 6 Marine codexes. Now you want 12.
Well, yeah, but you see, like in the fluff, that there's Primaris only chapters, like the Silver, I don't know, Silver Hawks Warriors. I don't know, but anyways,
There's not
uh,
many of them though, but there is some. Yeah.
no, not many of them. But you can build a bear chapter too. But I don't know, something, because to internally balance a codex and to externally balance with other codexes, like it's impossible when you got a codex that has like everything with 0 weaknesses on top of all the rules and rules. Anyways, that's my little soapbox there, but
Yeah. Well,
otherwise, they're
that's.
cool models. They're cool models. I must admit,
I'm all for them. I'm all for them now.
Yeah.
Just because it's you got to accept it, move on, or else quit.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now, well, I guess we can quickly go in. We've already kind of talked about this, but the weapons changes were more formally announced before they were kind of leaked in a sheet. But it's official. Multi-meltas are going up to 2 shots, which is, I think, a great addition. Power swords went up to strength +1 strength, which is also
Power
great.
weapons.
Power weapons. They all went up by 1, but specifically the power sword was the one I think most affected because it puts most units in that strength 4 to 5 range, whereas the maul and the axe already kind of did for most
It's
units.
actually pretty significant, I think.
Yeah, to go to strength 4 is like, to go to 5 is like pretty good. 6 from 5 isn't like a huge deal, but I definitely like that change. And as a Sisters of Battle or recent Sisters of Battle player, I wouldn't say I'm. I wouldn't even call myself a player at this point. But the some of the better units in that book got a nice bump from that. Right, strength 3 power weapons, reroll into wound is not the same as strength 4 reroll into wound.
Well, even other things like Scarab Terminators. You look at them; they're decently survivable, though still a little, a little fragile at times. They have their guns with all the AP too, but they also have power swords, and you pay 5 points for that power sword. Strength 4, like they have 2 attacks, 3 attacks on the charge. Strength 4, AP 3, 1 damage. You're like, oh, like you're never really thinking about them melee wise, but now, on the charge, if you have 10 of them, 3 attacks each, you can prescience them if they're going to be strength 5 with that -3, and then you can, veterans along war them. Now you can actually see them go into a unit of like intercessors and deal with the intercessors versus like leaving
100%.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how far they take that change because some units, like the first thing I thought about myself was Bullgrins. They don't have power mauls. They have Bullgrin mauls, but they're basically power mauls, right? So if that change makes it to Bullgrin mauls, all of a sudden the Bullgrins are now strength 8, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a pretty big change.
It's a big change. And maybe they will, because they did talk about Eldar Flamers, Eldar Power Weapons, and they flushed out. A lot of people were speculating, like, oh, is this just for the Imperial stuff? Is this just for Chaos? But they
Howling Banshees suddenly become interesting when they go to Strength 4, because Strength 3 is really bad, but now at Strength 4, they're kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, with Doom. Like, that's huge. As we said, like, a Strength 4 reroll to wound is way different than a 3.
Mm-hmm.
Way different. And I think any other major changes, I guess the Flamers all went up to 12 inches.
Yeah, that's
Hand
going to be
Flamers
scary.
actually went to 12 inches too, which
Crazy.
is crazy.
Yeah, the GSC hand flamers.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Flame
Yeah, because they can
aggressors are
take
gonna
whole
be
units,
impressive.
and they can come in. That's going to be a big buff for the GSC, I think.
20 guys.
Which will
They
be-
don't have to do that gimmick anymore where they move up in the with a strat. They can just show up in hand flamer. Like, so they save themselves a lot of CP doing that.
And they just nuke. And, hopefully, it wasn't confirmed, but hopefully it applies to Thousand Suns as well. You'll be
Rubrics?
able to...
Yeah, hopefully.
Rubrics, yeah.
That'd be nice if Warp Flamers get to 12 inches. Because you and I have been having this discussion over the last couple of weeks. Warp Flamers, no Warp Flamers. So that's why I haven't built any of the... Like, I've got 4 or 5 boxes of Thousand Suns at home I still have to put together. But now I'm just going to wait because I want to see if Warp Flamers go to 12 inches. Now I'm going to consider building, maybe Unit 10 or something.
And to clarify, I was assuming that they are, but we could be wrong. So
Yeah.
But Hand Flamers was interesting because Inferno pistols did not go up in range. They just got the melt of damage rule. So for those that don't know, which melta guns now at short range, instead of rolling 2d6 picking the highest, you just get a flat +2 wounds. So do you think that's better or worse? I think it's better. Well,
I think on average the math works out that it's better.
Yeah.
It's just more consistent,
No more
right?
fluffs of 1 damage.
Because you go from minimum 3 to maximum 8 now all of a sudden. Okay, it's on 1 die, so your average goes to 5, and something, I think. Whereas before 2d6 rolling, picking the highest, I think the average was 4 point something. So you gain like a half a point to a point of damage on average if you roll a lot of dice.
It's way better.
But I just like the more consistent nature of it. It's
That
more because now you're like, oh, I'm at close range. Your aggressors just die to melted guns. There is no randomness. It's +2. D6 is 3 wounds. You're gone. And if you think about something like a custody, they're gone on a 2+. Some of the 4 wound stuff.
No, it's important. I think that's way better. I would much rather that. Yeah.
Because I was looking at it for like the Sisters of Battle, right? You take their multi-meltas. They get a 12 range. You can use that strat where it's additional. It's only for the Retributors, but it gives them an additional 12-inch range. So you're at 18 inches. You get +3 damage as well. That's pretty good when you're hitting things like Wounds 4 or you're hitting a Night Titan, or which you don't see a lot of, but we kind of see them here because we have people that play that stuff. But it's nice to be able to be like, every time you fail your invol, that's a dead custody.
Well, yeah, not only Night Titans though, like the Demons Monster Mash list is getting a lot of traction. There's a lot of talk, so you're going to see a lot of. If we were to have big tournaments, say starting this weekend, you would see a lot of greater demons. I would imagine. Slaanesh ones in particular, yeah, and you'd also see Primarchs. I know some people are bringing out possibly like Morty and Magnus. Even like that +2 wounds against stuff like demon engines. You're going to see a lot of Death Guard demon engines. Like, yeah, they still have their invul, still have their feel no pains. But the more you can try to force them on those invuls and feel no pains, the better. So I think it's important.
Well, when you think about it, your minimum damage is higher, your average damage is higher, and your maximum damage is higher. So it's just a flat buff all across.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because before it wasn't worth it, right? It was like, like it's always nice, but you also had the free reroll if you needed it, right? So
yeah.
You didn't always have to get close, but no, I like that. Inferno pistols, I think that's fine because I think that could be game breaking if they went up to 12 inches. Like that'd be crazy for certain armies like Blood Angels and Sisters of Battle. I think that'd be too much. I thought it was funny when you read the community article. They're like, Retributors get this buff, and it was like every single.
I know they were under every category.
Yeah, they're like, yet again, Retributors get the buff, and I'm sitting there like. I almost wish the tournament this weekend was pushed back a week just so I could potentially use it.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll hand it off to Darren to plug the sponsors.
One other thing that got changed, I'm going to say it now, is Storm Shields.
You can go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
God. The Custodes Hour is about to begin.
So, Storm Shields...
Welcome to next.
So it was... Initially, they had said that Storm Shields was not going to apply to other factions other than like Marine Storm Shields, but then they seem to have changed their mind. So now our Guardians are sitting on a 1-up save with still a 3-up invuln, which is pretty nice. Basically gives them native ignore AP1, which is nice.
Yeah, it's pretty decent.
It's actually better than that. It's better than ignore AP1 because it's reduced AP by 1, so it always works.
Yeah.
So anyway. And it makes Marines easier to kill. Because 3-up invuln is a pain in the ass.
Not really. It is a pain, but it's also like a 1-up save in the open or whatever is also just as good.
It depends on what you're shooting at it, but generally if you're trying to get things on the invuln, it's way nicer not to have to deal with 3-up invuln.
Yeah, especially since there seems to be more high AP weapons rolling around these days.
Yeah, but I kind of think like the bane of when I think about taking out my Deathwing Terminators or something like that, a lot of their bane is like mass firepower of like -1 or -2, and that Storm Shield kind of gets rid of some of that. Like it just means more of them live. And if they're going to get more wounds as well, like sometimes a 3-up save is like godly and you make them all, and sometimes they just aren't.
Well, for sure, right? If you have access like us to 2-up save. Then with a Storm Shield, then that new Storm Shield is going to be great for you. Yeah.
Well, precisely. Yeah, I think it's good. I think getting rid of the 3-up invul as much as possible, I think, is a very smart move on their part. I find them a bit. If you make them, you make them. It's like one of those age-old things, but I find they can skew the results a little bit, like Darren's bike captain.
And then sometimes you roll 7 dice and fail 5 of them, right?
And they're dead. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so that's interesting. Now, do you think that's going to really? Because I read that and I went, I really like that, but I think the units that generally have storm shields, ignoring custodies, because they're good at everything. I don't know if it's enough to put them up a tier or not, personally, but
I think it's going to be good for stuff like Vanguard vets that can run around with storm shields, because what it's going to do is it's going to give them a 2-up save, basically. Whereas now you're a little insignificant, like all the strength 4 shooting you throw at them to try to plink them off. They're going to be 2 wounds soon, but you used to be able to throw strength 4, force them on their 3-up, is going to be less effective because now they're going to be on a 2-up with that storm shield. And then if you're shooting dedicated anti-tank weaponry at them, well, they're winning anyways because you're shooting anti-tank weapons at, their little storm shield guys. So I think
I didn't quite look at the. Yeah, I didn't quite look at the wording. Does that stack with cover? No, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it will stack with cover.
Yeah, it does.
Even better.
So Drago's got a 0-up save and cover.
Which is essentially ignoring AP -1 and 2.
Yeah.
Like all the time, no matter where.
And
you are in
AP
cover.
3, then it's no different
Well,
than if you
again,
had.
not to harp on this, but I hate this phrasing. You're not ignoring AP 1 and 2. It's better than that. You're
Yeah.
reducing AP by 2.
Yeah. So even
Sorry,
AP,
you're correct. You're correct.
Yeah. So even
Which is way
AP3,
better.
it would be on his
Way
old
better.
storm shield save, essentially.
Yeah.
You need a last cannon to make it worse.
Or a melt-a-guns.
Yeah.
Last cannon is AP3,
Minus
isn't it?
3.
Yeah. So then, yeah.
On the crawlery, though,
But that's
it
the
looks
nice
like there's
thing.
going to be a lot more Melta.
So that's one of the
True.
things is with this Melta boost and with that Storm Shield boost and with the way that the cover is in this game, yeah, Melta-guns are the new. They have been already, but that -4 is
Yeah.
really,
like, there's-
really worth
It's
it.
funny because Melta's sucked for most of the 8th edition.
Yeah. So maybe there is this
Eighth edition, yes.
grand plan that GW has that we have to wait till it's all enacted with all the books. But I have a suspicion, as much as I like to be salty about it, that with the heavy intercessors and all these weapons going up in damage and range, that it's all going to balance out with having tougher units. We're going to have more killy weapons. But having like a heavy intercessor, an intercessor, attack marine, and guardsman, it just improves the granularity in terms of the type of infantry you get in the game, from the super, disposable guardsman cultists all the way up to your heavy intercessor. That the level of toughness of OBSEC you can
Yeah,
get.
but that's
There's a
only if
lot of
everyone
different-
else gets similar increases.
Well, yeah, we'll see. I could be completely wrong, and the Thousand Suns book comes out, and they're like, "Haha, screw you!
Yeah,
You get
like,
no rules." And you're like,
You
"Well,
know, if
all right."
the
I'm
whole game is going up +1 wound, then fine. It all kind of equals out.
But it's not going
Yeah.
to do that.
So you're gonna have factions
I
who
think
get
what they
stuck,
did-
and
Well, I mean, you find, like, for example, Rubric, like all the Cult Marines, the Chaos Space Marines are already confirmed to be going up to that at some point, right? So now the heavy intercessors is just another level of, toughness that you can get above that. In terms of like a standard profile, like the Plague Marines and Rubrics all come with their own little jank, but
Yeah, my kind of take on it is they increase the points across the board so they could add that granularity. And then the other limiting factor, I think, was a lot of this 1 wound, 3-up save everywhere type thing. So there wasn't a lot of, like, having a Space Marine at 11 points back when I played 5th edition or 6th edition, it wasn't really that much better than a Guardsman for the equivalent of value of cover and things of that nature. Whereas now I think they've changed the points. A Marine is significantly more expensive than a Guardsman now, like 3 or 4 times. I guess that's pretty similar, but it's a higher percentage of your army.
yeah.
So now you're looking at that and you're going, okay, so now they need to be significantly better than a Guardsman. And they
Well,
kinda
that's
are.
it. So you look at a heavy intercessor. I don't know what the points are, but say they're in the 25 to 35 point range. That's anywhere from 5 to 7 times more than a Guardsman, right? So you get 5 to 7 Guardsmen for that one heavy intercessor. So that the Guardsmen, if you put them both on an objective, will beat that heavy intercessor off the objective in terms of like obsecness. But the Guardsmen, those 7 Guardsmen will never kill that heavy intercessor. Whereas the heavy intercessor can kill those Guardsmen. You know what I mean?
Oh,
so
easy. Yeah.
it's just a very interesting dynamic that's going to exist if it plays out that way, in terms of like what you're trading for having the heavy type intercessors versus just having Guardsmen and cultists. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can blow away my guys, but I have 100 of them. You have 30 heavy intercessors. So, anyways, who knows? Like, this is just like the beginning of every edition where codexes get revamped. There's a lot of like a bit of feels bads for the other codexes until they get their stuff. But perhaps in a year's time, once we start to get more of them, and if the level of the toughness of units and killingness of units increases with each one, kind of proportionally with Marines, it could be a very, very interesting game in my mind. If I'm looking at like armies of guardsmen versus armies of heavy intercessors.
Yeah, like I have heard rumors, like I haven't seen it personally, that armies with 100 guardsmen are doing quite well in other metas. I don't see that here because of our aggressor meta. I feel like the aggressors trump that list. You can use cover to hide them, but just in general, like one aggressor can nuke a guard. Like it doesn't kill the whole thing, obviously, but they're going to nuke a lot of those dudes pretty quickly. So,
what was that movie? Like Russians, that World War II Russian movie, Enemy at the Gates. Yeah, that scene where they're just running across and just getting mowed down by machine guns. That's essentially us throwing our armies into Francois when he has like the aggressors just lined up mid-table, like just getting mowed down. Yeah, I mean, other than Darren, because he's got custodies.
So one of the things that I'm speculating right now for myself is that when this Marine book drops, I've heard that aggressors are losing their double shoot. And so the shots seem to be getting more quality, less shots, because you have to fight people like Darren's Custodies. You have to fight Francois Space Marines, and even like to a certain extent Sisters of Battle. That I wonder if even with the blast rules, if you're going to see a horde come real soon. Because like if everybody's running melted guns, like I don't actually like if you have 12 melted guns, I don't care if I have 120 orcs.
Yeah, somebody shows up with their 9 zone thropes and 400 termagants, they're going to be like, okay, I don't care.
Even 60 termagants. 60 termagants, if you don't have aggressors, let's say. Well, actually, Francois' list actually all do really well against that, I think. Because you have but, some of these more elite armies just can't take that many OBSEC bodies out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It feels like we're in the weeds a bit. Maybe we should get to our actual topic.
Let's get back on topic. Darren, pay the bills.
Just shout out to all our sponsors: Dan, Dylan, Red Dragon, Martin, Dave Tistaminis, Hoyt Up Thunder Games and Gifts, all our supporters, patrons, followers, hangers on, CanHammer team members. Thank you everybody for your support.
Great. Okay, so I want to get into the main topic, the traps of 40K. We'll do that first, and we'll talk about how we've been preparing for this RTT at the end, because we kind of went over the first part of the show. But, there's just such an exciting time that I don't know about you guys, compared to, like, pre-COVID, how has your, like, thinking about 40K, like, tripled, like mine has?
My God, yes.
Yeah.
I'm spending so much time now painting, theory crafting, reading about 40K. That's insane.
Pre-COVID, I had my list that I did at Berry Bash, and I was convinced like the next tournament I was going to win with it, and that I didn't really need to change anything or whatever. Like it was just settled. But now it's just like 30 lists and in B or whatever it is, Battle Scribe, and I just can't paint fast enough.
When COVID hit, I'm known as the guy who paints armies in weeks. Right? When COVID hits, for 4 months, I think until 9th actually released, so 3 months and change, I didn't paint a single model, and then 9th hit. And I got so excited about the possibilities. I think I've painted 5,000 points since then.
That's amazing. Okay, so I guess we'll start with Darren. He's been kind of quiet. What's your first major trap in 40K?
Okay, this is one of my bugbear.
Or what is a trap? Like maybe you should describe what a trap is first.
A trap is like, in terms of what we're talking about tonight, is kind of like, well, I guess in general, it's kind of like maybe a way of thinking or a thing that people do that perhaps is not actually true, or maybe leads you to a wrong conclusion, or, I mean, it's very generic, but the way I think of it is like, okay, here's what everybody thinks. This is the popular opinion about X, but in fact, it's not actually true, or it's actually this way. That's kind of what I consider trap.
So something that seems like a good idea, but is
Sure,
not.
that's a great way. Leave it to the professor to sum it up.
It's
It's
a
a trap.
trap.
Wait, wait,
Yeah,
wait.
it's a
Wait for
trap.
guys here. Oh, there it is. It's a trap meme. Okay. I downloaded that.
That should be your thumbnail for
I
the
downloaded that
video.
especially for this episode.
Okay, Darren. So what's your first major
Okay.
trap that you think people get into or
So
you get
this is
into? Mine are all things
Yeah,
I
so
do.
this is a trap that I don't do. I try not to do it, but lots of people do, and I feel like it really leads you to wrong conclusions, kind of like my definition of what I felt like a trap is. And it has always been a trap, I feel, but is definitely more a trap now in ninth, and that is that X unit is not worth it because they don't make back their points. And I've always thought that is a stupid way of looking at how valuable or how useful a unit is, because units do much more than just kill things. And if you looked at it that way, I mean, my entire army is kind of useless then. So clearly that's not true. But especially in ninth, where there's an emphasis on holding objective play, secondaries and things, that is become even less true how much a unit kills, making back its points. So that's kind of the one that came straight to mind as a trap way of thinking to lead you to wrong conclusions about units.
No, that's a good one. That's a really good one because it's so true. Because that's assuming that if every unit in your army is worth it, you should table your opponent every game.
Exactly. 2,000 points
Yeah.
versus 2,000 points.
That doesn't
Yeah.
happen. Well, it does happen, but it shouldn't, right? If you play Nick, we'll go to you.
Especially now, the way that ninth plays, I think.
Yeah.
There's units that can have roles that they will just do what they're meant to do and die, so they never kill anything, but they got you points.
It's a great thing too.
Yeah. And sometimes
one
the
thing
threat of a unit is more important than what the unit actually does.
Yeah. And one thing that, like something silly as this, like a Death Copta is 35 points. It's probably not going to kill anything ever, but turn one, it might get you 2 points on secondary by moving into the one of the opponent's table quarters or dropping in on objective. It might get you points, and it might kill something, but you're talking like a big shooter, right? Like it's not going to do anything.
Mhm.
So it's a very good one actually. Nick, you want to take the next one?
Well,
Sorry, give an
just
example.
to expand a little bit on that, like for example, I got two examples, like the impossible robe Lord of Change. He's like almost 300 points, and he sure as hell does not kill 300 points. Like he can, but most of the time he doesn't. But just his ability to withstand firepower and enact your plan just is almost unparalleled in the game right now, especially with Storm Shields changing. And then another one, for example, in my recent list is I have a little Plague Marine bomb with the grenade. Like Chris, how many times did I really use that meaningfully in our games? Almost never. You know what I mean?
But that's
like,
my army. I feel like against Darren, that unit gets its points back every time.
sometimes, but not always. But sometimes it's the threat of that unit that I find like people avoid it when I play games like, because it's not the first time I played it. I played it well before War of the Spider. And people like go out of their way to avoid it, and I'm like, great, you're doing exactly what I want you to do. You're moving away from this area, whereas I have no intention of actually throwing the grenades. It's just like it's a waste of CP. It's just you're doing what I want you to do. So that's another example. Okay, so another trap I find, and this is a little bit more complicated math-wise, but like overall is the average dice trap. So you get thrown around a lot. People playing and they're like, oh, average dice, and they'll roll the dice, they look at them and they'll exclaim, oh, that's not average dice. And what ends up doing when people have that in their vernacular is they're setting up an expectation of what the dice roll is going to be, and they're setting up plans for that. But when it doesn't happen, then everything comes falling like a house of cards. And sometimes, like your average dice, say if you have 2s and 2s, then fine, it's a little bit more reliable. But say if you're, BS4, you got 10 shots, you'd expect, oh, I'm going to get 5 hits. But half the time, you're actually going to get less than 5 hits. So when somebody throws the dice and misses 6 times, I've seen players lose it. Like, oh, I don't get average dice. I should have gotten 5. Well,
And then they go on tilt.
And then they go on tilt. No, the problem here was your expectation of getting 5 hits. It's completely reasonable to get 4 hits, 2 hits, 3 hits. Like this is average. The very definition of average only applies after you have a sample of dice rolls that you can assess an average. So I think that's, and I don't want to get too deep into it because there's a lot of math and stuff, but like, I guess you're a little safer if you're like a Custodes player, you're hitting on twos, wounding on twos, then your expectations can be a little bit higher. But when you hit the 3 to 5 mark, hitting on threes or hitting on fives, that area, the variance is so high that it's not unreasonable to start seeing less than average or even more than average. And because it's a D6, you're looking at a 16% jump between one and the other stat, like from 1 to 2, or well, there's no ones, but from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and stuff like that. So my suggestion to people is to kind of remove the average dice term from their vernacular and really ponder what they're looking at. So if you're hoping, like if you're hitting on fours and you need to kill something and you need 5 hits, well, obviously 10 shots is not enough to do it reliably, even though it's average dice. Well, I don't know. Sometimes in a game you want to throw a Hail Mary, but sometimes you need a little bit more than 50-50.
This is something that I used to be guilty of all the time. I'm the kind of player that maths out results in my head, and I used to math out the average result, and then half the time it wouldn't work. Yep. So now what I do is I math out the average result, and I throw in a couple extras, because you don't need much extra to suddenly tilt the odds way in your favor. Mm-hmm. So if you need 5 hits, and it takes you on average 10 shots, think, okay, what if I throw 12 shots? Then all of a sudden, the odds are way more in your favor.
So that's
something you can do. If you're the kind of player who, like me, likes to math out things ahead, like go, how many shots do I need to do this? Throw a couple extra.
I can't remember who said it. It may have been on a podcast or somebody told me privately. I don't know. But you got to play, if you want to succeed, you got to play pessimistic 40K. You got to err a little bit on the side of overkill or overcaution if you definitely need to get something done, because the average, if you throw 160 aggressor shots, that's probably going to regress to the average, right? If you're throwing 6 shots of anything, even my 6 shots hitting on twos can definitely be below average. So when you're talking about average, you're talking about huge numbers, and while some units hit those huge numbers, many don't. So you got to play pessimistic 40K. I love that statement, pessimistic 40K.
Oh, you absolutely have to, because people apply like statistical thinking to a game where you're throwing, like even if you're throwing a couple hundred dice throughout one game, that's still in real science. Those aren't numbers. Those are rookie numbers. You know what I mean? So yeah, you do have to play pessimistic 40K, and by
you calling a rookie?
Yeah, those are rookie numbers. But if
throw more than that, buddy. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but that's why you're never disappointed as an orc, right? You're like, oh, look at this, I got 30 hits, but because you threw 180 dice,
but even then you can spike. Like all of a sudden you hit 5 sixes out of 10 shots, and then for the next few rounds you don't, right? So even if you're throwing lots of dice, you can still spike up and down.
And along that lines, I don't want to, like I said, the math gets complicated, but I don't want to dwell on too much. But it's not because you didn't hit the last time you threw the dice that you're going to hit statistically more that you throw them now.
That's how people lose a lot of money at casinos.
Yeah. The dice don't remember. You know what I mean? It doesn't remember what you rolled before. You're as likely to roll the same thing as you did. Okay, well,
thank you for stealing my "I'm due now" trap.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Well, you can elaborate on it then.
No, it's fine. I got other stuff.
Yeah. I guess my only complaint would be I like when I play. Yeah, you have to play very careful. So it's all about this unit needs to die. It's on an objective. I'm going to literally shoot everything I possibly can until it's gone, and then move on. And then you don't care. Like I don't think I've ever looked at something and been like I'll do the math of a unit just to kind of understand the generalness, but I don't in the game go, oh, I'm only going to put 10 shots because it's 5 guys, right? Personally.
But some people do that.
I try to never
some people
worry about
do
that.
do that.
Yeah, but then you're splitting fire. I've never regretted overkilling something, but I have regretted split fire.
Yes.
Like you never regret just eliminating a unit.
Yeah.
Never. Because in this game, one model holds one objective, wins you the game. Mm-hmm. So, Francois, you got one?
Yeah, so the one I want to talk about is maybe super obvious, but I think it's something really important to keep in mind. It's just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Right. And throughout a game, you're going to be tempted to do things. Usually that temptation is to kill something. Like, okay, I can move there and kill that unit. Not always. There's other temptations that are wrong sometimes, but let's just use that one as an example. If I move my unit here, it'll kill this unit, and then I'll feel good. Like I'll get an endorphin rush because I'm successful and I've killed something. Like this is kind of why we play, right?
Oh, yeah.
We throw dice and we kill things and we feel good. But sometimes that can lose you the game. Because if you've moved your unit out of position to do that, all of a sudden you're not scoring your points. So especially for, I think, newer players to the game, this is a overwhelming temptation to do something, to be active, when sometimes staying behind your wall, staying behind your ruin, and hiding and scoring your points is what you should do to win the game.
So I love that one because I've been preaching recently the mid to late game bait of putting your characters out in the open to absorb fire. And that...
Well, you can do that.
Yeah. So I'm talking about specifically for Custodes. but that
I'm like, mine are tough.
But that harks back to the psychology of I can kill Trajan, I should kill Trajan, right? Like, do you really need to kill Trajan, right? Like, it's like...
And in most games, it's going to make zero difference by turn 4. You kill Trajan, big whoop.
No, I like that.
Well, that actually plays into... Sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
Sorry, just like Francois' thing is perfect for mistakes that we always used to make, like charging things you don't really need to charge. You know, shooting a couple of bolter shots into a unit. Now you made your charge 2 inches longer. Mm-hmm. It's like, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. It's so hard to not shoot a unit. When you have the guns and you have nothing else to shoot, you're like, I should shoot it. You're like, nope, you need to not shoot it. So, yeah.
Or
I still make those mistakes all the time.
Same thing. Like, how many times have you seen? I've seen guys at tournaments, because we ref a lot, and literally roll dice that mean nothing, and then run out of time and lose the game that they could have won. Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah, along those lines too, just to elaborate a little bit, is almost there's a sunk cost element to that as well. Like there are times where, like, I've had people shoot, say, that Lord of Change, right? And they'll shoot a tank into it. But now they'll feel compelled to shoot their other tanks because their first one didn't do anything. Not by virtue that they think they're going to kill him, but because they feel that they've already committed to shooting that Lord of Change, that they'll continue shooting him. Whereas those shots could be better put somewhere else, right? Killing something on an objective or whatever. And it's
hard to stop.
More of a sunk cost element. Like sometimes you're going to do something, it's not going to work out, so you have to move on and do other things versus, overcommitting or whatever.
Yeah. Once you started doing something, it's hard to stop doing it until you see what you want to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a really, really good podcast on that from Freakonomics on why you should quit things.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. So listen to that. They do a better job of us. So I guess the first trap that I kind of thought about, and I do a lot, is a lot of people try to score everything turn 1. So you have engage on all fronts. So you're like, I got these 2 little units. I'm going to pop them up. I'm going to get my 3 points turn 1. Well, you just lost 2 units turn 1. Like for 3 points. Yes, you got your 3 points. But those 2 units could have been used a lot better to get 5-6 points on primaries and score it later. So I think a common trap is that people just try to score too much turn 1. And so what I would always say, or I try to convince myself, because I'm really bad at this, because I love killing stuff. I love being aggressive. It's like I play orcs. Like it is what it is. Or I used to play orcs, I feel like. But it's you don't need to. If the mission is hold 1 objective, so if you go first, you have to hold 1 objective, you get 5 points. 2 you get 10. Well, just hold 2 objectives safely. Done. And then your opponent goes, and then you just have to, same thing. I have to hold 3 objectives because then my opponent doesn't get scored more. So you only have to hold 3. You don't need to hold 6, right? You don't need to get 15 on all your secondaries starting turn 1. You can wait, right?
And that's something that really had to try and learn since 9th came out, because you're like, okay, I need 15 points on primary. Not really. You have a max of 45 to get over 5 turns. You don't need to get 15 points on primary, like really, any turn.
You just need 10.
Need 10.
Yeah, you
right?
see 10.
And so you don't need to go full out. And as you say, like it was especially in ITC when you only needed 4 turns to score all your secondaries. You didn't have to do it till turn 3, but to the same extent, it's the same in ninth. It's like you don't have to go get your recon first turn if it's going to put things in jeopardy.
Precisely. And the thing I like about the primaries mainly is, like, it's easy to forget that 45. And if your opponent has a softer or a lighter, a more fragile army, something like Dark Eldar, I just say that because I just watched one of Scari's games, and he has to put a lot of units out to get the objectives. Well, against someone that's more of a glass hammer, Harlequins are a good one too. You're better off just taking 2, let them get their 15 the first couple rounds, because you're going to be killing their units to take those objectives. So just take the early game loss to then kill all their units and then score a lot more late game. So I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest trap I think I do every game.
Well, that was exactly our first game that we played, right? You went first, you put 2 units of sisters on the objectives, like right in front of my rubrics, and then my rubrics blew them both away, and you're like, I actually only needed 1 unit of sisters to hold those objectives. So I don't know why I put 2. And it's just it was just an immediate thing that we both noticed, like, oh yeah.
Yeah. It was, it's just like that. Don't bleed the free points, right? Okay, Darren, you got another one?
I do. I think often it is a trap to use the CP reroll. I think
that's because you're unlucky.
I think people use the CP reroll often for things that they shouldn't, either because it doesn't matter, or it's statistically a bad reroll, or that's their last CP. Like, a CP is very important resource. 1 CP can do a lot of things. And so just spamming it on like a random save or to wound roll when you already had 8 other wounds, or like, you really got to think about it. And I think people fall into that trap. They get so annoyed that they failed that roll, so they just CP reroll it right off. And I think that's a real trap.
Yeah, that strat, CP reroll, is even worse now. So that was kind of a trap in 8th ed, but now you can't re-roll the stuff that matters. Vehicle explosion, that's a big deal when that goes off. You can't re-roll Guilliman getting back up. You can't re-roll Celestine getting back up. There's a lot of examples you can't do anymore. That strat is still might have, to me and other people, it might have a lot more value than maybe it should. Because as you said, unless it's like, okay, I'm wounding on a 2+ or a 3+, and if I get this wound, that Marine is dead, and he's the last Marine on objective, and it gives me 5 points, then it's worth it. But if it's just like, and I've caught that trap too, I just want to kill a little bit more this turn earlier, and then you're like, well, now I can't do that fight twice 2 turns from now, or I can't get this character back up 2 turns from now.
Or the one that I do all the time is a damage roll that either way you're not going to kill whatever you're shooting at. So you have a d6 damage on something, and it's got 8 wounds left, so you can't kill it either way. You roll a 1, and then you spend your CP roll and turn it into a 6. Big whoop. It doesn't change anything. You still have not killed what you've been shooting at.
Yeah, and this game is all about, because the way it goes turn by turn, it's like, if you can go first and kill more units because your opponent doesn't hide, it's just like you get better and better and better as the game goes on, right? Because it's less coming back at you. So, yeah, you definitely don't want to waste it on that. That was a good one, Darren. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go back. He's like, yeah, I have good ideas, guys.
Occasionally.
We'll go over to, I think it was Nick was next.
You guys have really said a lot of the ones I thought of. So
That's good.
Yeah, I think one of these is a little bit more specific. I hear a lot in the chaos circles that souping is bad, and I think that is a bit of a trap ideology in kind of in list design. Like, for example, you start off with 12 CP for a battle-forged army, and then you get 5 CP over the course of the game, not including whatever relics. That's 17 CP. That's plenty. And I remember my list before 8th was running on maybe 8 or 7 for a game. So now, like, even losing 2 for an extra patrol, if that shores up a lot of weaknesses, that your army has, then I think that's worth more than than losing those 2 CP. And I suppose that might, I'd be getting a little into the weeds. I'm going to stick to just that topic, that maybe just get out of the trap that there's any one specific way of building a list, including whether it should be mono or you can soup. I think whether you lose CP or not, it depends a lot on whether you're shoring up a weakness, if there's a rhyme to that reason, like if there's reason to that. It's not as strong a trap, I think, as some of the other ones we brought up, but I think that's one that I hear a lot, especially in Chaos, because Chaos is a soup heavy kind of faction, and a lot of people saying, oh, Chaos's soup is dead and whatnot. And I found actually that I'm quite successful souping my list, even though you sacrifice a couple of CP for it.
So what I'm hearing is the trap is don't take everybody on the internet at face value. And
definitely, that's 100% it, actually. That's probably the best.
So souping might be good. Everybody says hordes are dead because of blast weapons, but then orcs with like 90 boys and 30-man units have won a couple tournaments recently. It is what it is, right? Like it's you can listen to the internet to a certain extent, but take that all with a grain of salt.
Especially right now, right? Like
I actually think that's perfect. You've articulated way better. I think what I was trying to communicate is that, I think that expands way better. Just don't listen necessarily to the internet. You might have some good ideas, or your buddy that, read one list from one little tournament, whatever else, but, like they're not always right. You could tell people will tell you something sucks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's right. So anyways,
it also has to work for you. It also has to work for you. Like if you're like, I'm a more aggressive player, I have to play more aggressive lists, or else I just don't win, right? So anyway, Francois, you got another trap for us?
Just one more. Because my last one was maybe overly simplistic, I'll go a little bit more specific with this one. Especially in 9th edition, there are a lot of secondaries that I think are traps. And we could probably spend an entire episode talking about those, but just one example. Just because the enemy list seems to give you a lot of points in a kill secondary, I think the kill secondaries are especially problematic. It doesn't mean you should
Titan
take
Slayer.
It because Titan Slayer, it depends, because if the enemy list is a knight list and you don't kill at least one of the knights, you've lost.
That's not true. That's not true.
Okay.
I played knights. I took Titan Slayer. I got a 0.
Yeah,
and
it's still a trap, right? Because you just assume with an army full of knights you're going to be able to kill at least one, but that's
assuming you have at least some knight killing weapons, which not every list does. But there are some lists that you look at it and you go, okay, well, if I kill all of his armor, I get 15 points. But killing all of the armor in a list, if it's only 15 points, especially, if it gives you 27, then by all means do it. But if you add up all of the armor in the enemy list, all the vehicles, and it only gives you 15 points, that means you're basically banking on tabling that enemy to get your points. At that point, why not take something that you have control over, like scramblers or whatever else? But killing all of the enemy vehicles means that the enemy's letting you do it. Because if I want to hide a vehicle for the entire game, I can. Unless you're running all over the table, tabling me, and I've already lost. So some of those kill secondaries tend to be very much a win more kind of trap, and you got to be real careful and think real hard about whether or not you're going to take them. Like a list that's got lots of characters, for instance, you might be tempted to take Assassinate against. But hiding characters is not that hard. And all of a sudden, you've given your opponent control of how many points you score.
100%. I think you're absolutely right. And this happened actually, again, Chris, in my games. I would take Assassinate because Chris has like 37 characters. But these... might as well be 37. But anyways, they're all hiding behind like 42 sister squads in the back, or they're the Triumph with all these buffs and miracle dice that can keep it alive, or they're Celestine or his other character that get back alive. So like I spend 3 turns killing 2 characters and I've scored 6 points. And meanwhile, the rest of my army could have been doing something more meaningful. So yeah, I've only scored 6 points, and it's distracted my army for those 2 or 3 turns. So that's an excellent, or one against my new army, and I'll confess it now for this weekend, but like people are going to consider taking, say, Abhor the Witch against me because I got the 2 Psyker characters and I got the rubrics and whatever else. But I've actually only got 4 targets for that. And it's easy for me, like if you're killing Armon and the Demon Prince, I'm already losing. And the rubrics, they can teleport they're 20 men. So once they get down to 3 men, they teleport to the back corner and you'll never get them again. And the Scarab Terminator is always deep strike. So if I'm worried about you really getting that, they can deep strike somewhere else.
I guess the shorter version of my point is take secondaries that you have control over, and not secondaries that the enemy has control over.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of those kill secondaries can be traps for sure.
It's a trap.
And I'll give you that's easier said than done, to be honest.
Sure.
But it is a trap.
But I think in the list building stage, you can build a list that will be able to just take secondaries that don't require you to interact with the enemy.
I
something
think
my White Scars list actually I think does really well.
Yeah, I think when you're building a list, you should really, really have a good idea of what secondaries you'll be taking most games, like two of them, and then the third maybe contingent on your opponent and mission and whatnot. But really,
and if someone just hands you a kill secondary on a silver platter, by all means, take it.
Yeah.
But it's very matchup dependent.
Yeah, because I put a lot of thought into that with my recent orc list that I'm working on. And it's like when you take the fast attack, you take 3 Death Copters, they count as vehicles, right? So that's 2, 4, 6 points. And then I take 3 mech guns for my heavy support. That's 2, 4, 6 points. That's 12 points on garbage, right? So now it's like, well, you either take the Death Copters and the and no heavy support, or you take Storm Boys and mech guns, because now you're not giving somebody a free secondary. So there's also that as well.
Yeah.
But I guess if I think the only trap that I have left that to me is an important one, because it's something that I fight constantly, and that's the don't change your list too much after games. Everybody does it. You don't need to. I can be bad for that sometimes. Go out and buy like tons of units and swap them in, swap them out. But for the most part, 1, 2 games, 3 games, 10 games isn't a good metric on how effective your army is. You may not see the value of certain units until you get 10, 20, 30 reps with them. So you don't have to, win and change your list every time. Do little changes and work through that. So,
especially for those of us who tend to play a lot against the same opponent. Like I play Darren a lot, and so I end up sometimes inadvertently tailoring lists that are going to do well against Custodes, but that's a terrible idea, because you're not going to run into Custodes every game.
It's a terrible idea, Francois. Yeah, don't do that at all.
but in the other hand is that if you cater towards Custodes and Marines right now, like look at this weekend. Charlie's going right this weekend.
No.
Okay, I thought so. Let's say he was. That'd be 2 Custodes out of 8 people, and then you have 2 Space Marine players, right? So in that case, it makes sense because the meta is so small. But
yeah,
no, it's just for me, it's a trap. Is that like I'll go to Nick's house and I'll play a couple games. They won't go well, and I'll be like, well, these units are all crap. Throw them out. But in reality, it's like, well, you misplayed that. That was close. You screwed that up. So it's not always that.
Yeah.
And you might be playing against a more kind of esoteric army. You know what I mean? Like something that isn't played that often at all, right? So it might not be a good measure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like if knights table you, well, it is what it is, right? They're not around, so just kind of count your losses. That's bad luck.
Okay, I have one more. I don't know if you guys are out, but I got one more, and it's the classic, and we've all been guilty of it at some point. The trap of blaming your dice for your loss.
You do that every time we play, Darren.
I said I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. But it's hard not to do it, and especially after maybe a slightly less than average turn or round or game or whatever. But you can always learn something better from a loss that you probably didn't do very well, that sets yourself up to be victim of subpar rolling. So
That's a great
do you want me to say something? Taboo. Sometimes you do lose because of your dice.
Sometimes, but if you get into the habit every time, right?
Yeah. Just you gotta stop worrying about the dice. My stress level dropped in this game over years. It took years, obviously. When I don't even really register the dice as much as I used to. Now, it does hurt for somebody like Darren more than somebody like me. If you take an army of 20 guys, you feel the bad luck. Like if you roll those 4 1s, you feel it, right? You really feel it. Whereas if you take a lot of the other armies like Guard, a million Assault Intercessors, you're not going to feel a little bit of bad luck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I used to feel that with my Deathwing a lot more, is I would feel the dice.
Yeah.
Because you'd roll 3 1s or 4 1s, you'd be like, ouch. That's like half my army.
Or when
and so maybe
exactly.
the advice, the trap is not that you don't blame the dice, because as you say, sometimes your dice just shit the pants when you really need them, but not to let it like unduly influence you. Like you say, you learn to roll with it.
It should almost be your
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to just say it should be almost the diagnosis of exclusion. It's like once you've covered everything else in your game that you think could have changed, then maybe the dice played a role. But you should really be evaluating everything else you've done first.
The way that I kind of wrote this one out, and I wasn't going to put it in, but it's something similar I was trying to articulate, but I'm no professor like Francois.
PhDs in the house.
Don't necessarily plan or worry about things that are outside of your control. That's a trap, because then you're not realizing the real dangers of it. So, worry about your list. You can control your list. Worry about your decisions and how you play. Thinking about dice, whether or not you rolled 3,000 ones in a row, doesn't actually matter, because that's out of your control, unless you want to cheat. In which case, all the power to you. But
then it is in your control, I guess. Yeah.
But I think people tend to blame things that are out of their control, and it's not just in the game; it's in a lot of things. Like, I'm bad for this too. Stupid custodies. They're always tabling me. It's stupid. Well, pick up the Custodes army. It's within your control, or customize your army to fight them if that's your weakness, or play differently, right? Like, yeah, focus on the stuff you can change, not the stuff you can't.
Because it can have follow-on.
Sounds like an AA meeting.
Yeah. Well, no, but it's true. It can affect your follow-up thinking, right? If the dice don't work out, fine. But the problem is, if you start worrying about that too much and you let it tilt you, then you can be making poor decisions based on those dice rolls. Whereas, it might not even be that important, rolling 6 1s in a row, but because you're experiencing it that way, you're making it important, because now you're making bad decisions because of it. Whereas you could have just completely recovered.
Well, it's also like, yeah, so what? You blasted Morty straight up the board and rolled 6 1s and he died. Well, why did you blast him straight up the board, right? Like,
Yeah.
You could have played it better, and that's how you got to think about it. So it's kind of a trap, but it's also your own thinking is a trap. But if we go back on the tabletop, any more last on the table traps that people do?
I'm sure there are many more, but I can't think of any at the moment. They'll come up as we play more games.
Great. So I guess we can move on to RTT prep. I don't want to talk too much because obviously we're gonna. But Darren, did you want to say something specific about this?
No, I'm just like kind of what you guys are gonna bring and sort of lists. Mine is easy. I'm just gonna play the same list I've been playing because I think it's a very good list, and it's very practiced, and I'm ready for anything. So I'm just gonna bring the same list.
No, I don't blame you. I was encouraging it because I want you to bring your A game, because there's going to be a lot of, I think, hard lists there this time.
Yep. So other than us, what do we got? We got Jeremy's bringing AdMech apparently. Will is bringing Chaos again, I presume.
Or Guard. He's not sure
Guard.
yet.
Okay.
I think Will would do well with his Guard. The artillery spam. I think that'd be interesting.
I think one person's bringing Knights.
Some Forge World Knights, yeah.
And then who's the fourth person who's not on here? Dominic's bringing Salamanders probably. That's going to be...
You forgot
it's going to be hard-hitting. Obviously, it's Dom, so he's going to bring the hard-hitting shit.
Well, Salamanders are in a really good place, man.
Oh, yeah.
In the addition of Melta Guns, +1 to wound Melta Guns are king, right?
I'm scared of the Salamanders. It's a tough list.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, Jeremy's on the Twitch. He says he can neither confirm nor deny the bringing of AdMech.
Well, he won last time, so he's the
He's
reigning
the reigning
champion.
champion, yes.
Yeah, I would have liked him to see Dark Angels again, just to take the title back, right?
Yeah, but
Dark
he's
Angels 2 in a row would be really
painting beautiful blue bombers, so we want to see those.
cool. That's true.
So, Chris, what are you bringing? This is still debated,
So
or
I'm actually undecided. So I have 5 lists that I'm choosing between.
5 lists.
It's probably narrowed down to 3 right now. So I'm going through this thing right now where my sisters are about to get what I think is going to be a massive buff. I think based on that, we talked about it earlier, the sisters battle have more to gain from these weapon upgrades than I think almost any other army. Like the Marines already have great weapons and 24-inch range melta-guns, but in some of the lists that I've played you guys with, every weapon in my army gets an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
That's a massive change, right? So part of me doesn't want to take them because I'm worried that I'll get discouraged using the old rules, knowing what I mean, knowing the new ones come out.
Mhm.
If that makes sense, it's kind of silly, but
Yep.
and also I've been seeing a lot of people successful with orcs, right? So I just can't iron down an orc build. I'm looking. I have actually I don't know. I can't show the camera, but I have 2 display boards sitting behind me, and one has my orc list that I'm most likely going to take if it's favorable, and one is my sister's list, and I kind of
You
look
just stare at them for hours
all day, and I set them
Talk
off.
to
Which
me.
one looks
Talk
the
to
best?
me.
Which one has the best secondaries? And it's kind of interesting. So I don't know. It's been really hard for me. I'm thinking about taking a day off this week to paint, and so I need to pick which army I'm going to bring and which models I need to paint. And I've been assembling models just in case I decide to take that list, because you can paint models quickly in a day. You can't build and paint and prime. So I've been building orc models just randomly, like Death Cop does and stuff like that, so that I can have them ready in case I need them in my list.
Oh
But
God, 3 days left, Chris.
lists aren't due, it's just killing me, man. I don't know. What would you guys think I should take? Orcs or sisters?
So it depends what you want to do. If you want to have fun, orcs. If you want to get more reps in sisters, because yes, your sisters are only getting better, but more reps with sisters in a lesser position of power, I guess, makes you a better sisters player. So it depends what you want to do over the medium to long term, I guess. Not that anything matters because COVID.
Yeah, well, so my sister's list is really unique too, because I dropped the funeral procession.
Okay.
It's out of the list.
Flip a coin. That's my advice. Flip a coin.
Nah, sisters.
Yeah, I'll think about it. But that's it, man. I'm all over the place. I don't know. I haven't been this undecided in a very long time. Like with my orcs in the 8th edition, there was times where I was like, okay, I can't take what I want to take because I'm painting it or I have to build it, or I'm waiting for it to come in the mail or whatever, because that army was ginormous. But now it's it's not a matter of units, because I seem to have all the units for all the builds I want. It's just a matter of ironing that
Warped.
down.
I say sisters without the exorcist.
No, I like those exorcists.
Warp spiders with harlequins. Yeah.
Well, the fun answer is orcs. Whoa.
You think they're fun?
Orcs are fun.
Nah, it's way too many
They're
models.
fun. I've had a lot of fun with sisters. Though.
Bring sisters then. Sounds like you want sisters.
It's less painted though.
In your heart of hearts, you want sisters.
I kind of do.
There you go.
There you
There's
go.
the answer.
Yeah, you flip a coin, and then when you see the result, your heart will tell you immediately which one you wanted.
Well, and so I was talking to TJ actually maybe an hour ago or 2 hours ago, and he was like, what's going to be there? And I was like, salamanders, white scars, Death Guard, Thousand Suns, and Custodes. And he was like, oh, you can't take orcs. He's like, you can't take your orc list. He's like, you'll just lose everything. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Cool. So what are you prepping, Nick?
Basically, the list with very minor tweaks that I played against you. So the first RTT, I played Grey Knights. I felt less experienced, more anchored with them, and they're just kind of like you. knowing that there's upgrades coming to the army in either the near or distant future, I don't feel like I want to play them knowing that. And that in Abhor the Witch is basically a free 15 points. So I went back to what I was good at, or what I, played a lot longer, is Thousand Sons and Death Guard. So basically, Thousand Sons with Armin, 20 rubrics, 5 scarabs, and Cult of Duplicity, so they can teleport anywhere on the table. And then Death Guard with Demon Prince. The only change is now he's -1 to wound, or not -1 to wound, -1 damage. Make him a little more survivable. With 7
It's already pretty fucking survivable.
Yeah.
I know, exactly. Just a little extra. So, Plague Marines with the Grenade Dude, and he's the Arch Contaminator now. 2 Blight Hauler, or 2 Mephitic Blight Haulers, 2 Plague Burst Crawlers, 5 Spawn where they get the Feel No Pain, and 3 Death Shroud Terminators now instead of the 5 Blight Lord Terminators, and 10 Poxwalkers. Simply because, well, I don't want, simply because the last game you won because you stole my back objectives from under me. And so now I have the 10 Poxwalkers to protect, have some OBSEC back there, protect those. Death Shroud are easier to sneak in the backfield of the enemy because they're only 3 models, and they're AP3. So I'm not going to run into that issue anymore where they bounce off a bunch of sisters like my Blight Lords did. Yeah, or Custodes. Because that was like my big, like what Chris alluded to earlier in our last game. Like, obviously there was a lot of things that had to go my way, so it really wasn't likely at all. But one of the big pushes was Blight Lords going into his tank and like 5 sisters to pull him off as his objective, and they bounced off because they ignore AP1-2. I'm like, these are Blight Lords. How do they bounce? So I was like, that's it. I'm bringing the Death Shroud. They have AP3. Their strength like 8 or something. Anyway.
Well, that's something I learned at your house. Was I never used to put a lot of stock in the ignore -1 and 2. I used to just be like, well, just ignoring -1 or more CP might be more worth it. But 5 sisters ignoring 1 and 2 in cover.
It's so good, Chris.
For their points cost and the buffs, it's pretty crazy. Like, I thought about games that I played against Darren where his Custodes guys were like, they were -1 and 2, coming in with crazy shots. I might have lived through a lot of that stuff, right? So,
well, it's the difference between my rubrics tabling you in 2 turns to you're winning because I can't pull you off the objectives.
Yeah, it's
sounds
crazy.
Like a
You're
really
spawned.
strong list, Nick. Yeah, I'm actually kind of terrified of it.
So that's the thing. I think like Nick's list is really strong. Darren's list is really strong. Now we'll go on to Francois.
Well, I've already kind of talked about my list in the opening part of the show, but when Indominus came out and all those new Primaris Marines, the Bikers, the Assault Intercessors came out, my mind just went, these are going to make for an absolutely amazing White Scars army. So I set to build an Indominus-based White Scar army, and it's so much fun. I've had exactly 1 game with it so far, so maybe I'll change my mind. But the speed, the assault power of this army plays so different from anything I'm used to. If I wanted to win this weekend, I'd probably take my Ultramarines because I've played them so much. I know them well. I think they're really, really strong. But the White Scars are so much fun. It's like you get, and this is going to be, again, maybe harping back to our trap topic, it's going to be real hard for me to actually rein them in just because I can charge you turn 1. I shouldn't. They can go all over the board. They can hit super hard. I'm really in love right now with this White Scars army.
Well, then you're going to play better.
So it kind of makes sense why you bought 3 of them, right?
Yes, I bought 3 Indominus boxes. Yes. and I also have a Necron army coming. Look for it on the channel very soon. I just half painted. I have 1,000 points of Necrons painted already.
Oh, and a Harlequin. It's funny because you're preparing to play White Scars at a tournament, but you're building and painting Harlequins. So.
Yeah, well, White Scars and Harlequins play fairly similarly, so I'm getting practice with our White Scars, and then the Harlequins are going to be ready.
Now, is there anything that you guys are doing special to prepare for this tournament, or just show up and whatever?
Trying not to get sick with the start of school.
Yeah, I'm hoping the allergy season ends. I don't know if people could tell I'm a bit congested today, but it's allergies, man. I can't shake it. I actually can't wait for snow to kill all that stuff.
Yeah.
Since I'm taking basically a brand new army, I'm looking at this tournament as just more reps. I get 3 reps in a day against good opponents and strong armies, so I'm looking at it as just more practice.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
basically like any other tournament, practice. A lot of the same things we've been saying. Use the same list. Like I've used the same list against Chris. Like with one minor change for the last 5 games, it's done reasonably well. Of course, it's 3 games against Sisters and 2 against Abmech. So like I don't have but these are models I've played with for the last couple of years. Go over the secondaries that I anticipate picking, and that kind of stuff.
Good stuff. So I guess we can go on to Q&A. So any questions there?
There were no questions except for one. That was from last week before we had to postpone the podcast, and that was for you, Chris, as a ETC or a WTC veteran. What do you think are the armies you would put in your 8-man team right now?
Oh, that's
all the power armor.
So it's pretty easy right now because of the fact that we know this new Marine book has come out a few weeks ago. It wasn't really confirmed. And so I'm going to theorize a little bit. The way that the WTC is moving, it looks like they're moving to a model where all Space Marine chapters, including Death Watch, are in one book. Then they have the supplements. Now, historically at the WTC, the supplements haven't been enough. So you couldn't take like a Salamander's army and a White Scars army because they're not full books. They use the core Space Marine book. So if that's indeed the case, which is what I'm confident it will be, if you're looking for like the top 8 ETC armies, in my opinion, is Space Marines for sure. You're going to have 1 Space Marine player. I don't think that's controversial at all. Now, what would they be? I would say probably Salamanders if I had to put money on it right now. Mind you, the new book and blah, blah, blah.
Right
but right this second, Salamanders. Number 2 for sure is Custodes. Easy choice, I think, for those 2. The third one I would probably put Grey Knights.
WTC rolling back their Forge World thing?
So as of right now, the WTC pack does allow Forge World,
really?
but the pack has not been voted on, so it's not official.
Wow.
And I'm not sure how that vote's going to go. But based on I really don't know. But
okay.
Yeah, so
Custodians can be strong without Forge World.
Yes, but we have some very strong units in Forge World.
They don't need it at all. But even without Forge World, I don't think you need it to necessarily be the effective army. So those 2 are like kind of the easy end. I would like to see some form of chaos, probably like Demons and Death Guard, Gurgling Spam, something like that would be really good as number 3. Number 4 for me is probably like Harlequins. I really like them. I think they're very fast. And in the WTC format, you can kind of take them out of their bad matchups. So they do really good. They'll do really well, sorry. And Mr. Professor's here. I got to speak proper
PhDs.
English. So those are the... Sorry?
PhDs, that's the trap. Speak good English.
After that, it gets a little bit harder. I do like the Grey Knights because of the abilities they have to shoot through terrain. If you look at the WTC maps, there's a lot of heavy terrain. So that kind of, and same thing with the Grey Knights, you can eliminate those bad matchups that they have because they don't have a lot of them, but they have some. So it'll allow you to pick the secondaries. After that, it gets kind of hard.
Admech's pretty strong right now.
To finish it. They can be. I haven't seen it in person.
Grudge match, Chris versus Jeremy this weekend. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure he's got more reps with his Admech than... So that'd be it. Sisters, I think, are a maybe. Orcs are like a very unlikely, but that's kind of
what about something like Tyranids, the Zoanthropes, and a lot of bodies that could be good in some matchups where they're not prepared for that.
Yeah, they're probably a choice as well. The rest, though, it's all unknown at this point. If we had to go tomorrow, Tyranids for sure. Necrons is also an unknown. They're getting a new book. Right now, I'd say probably not.
There's a guy out of Australia playing Necrons that apparently hasn't lost, and he's been playing like Necron, like a billion Necron bodies, Triarch Stalkers. Anyways, Apparently they
Not to
can't.
be a party pooper, but it's kind of a moot point anyway, because by the
Yeah,
time
it's
it
a moot
happens,
point.
there's going to be like 6 more codexes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I like about the WTC, and like I can't really finish that because I've thought in depth about it, and I don't want to go into my deep thoughts on the team composition. But
Fine.
at WTC, certain codexes are way more valuable. Things like this year Tau is out because or right now Tau is out. Sorry, but books like Tau and Sisters are way more valuable when you only get to take. Like Sisters might not be a tournament winning army. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. They have potential. But when you start limiting teams to 1 book Space Marines, 1 book Custodes, their power level increases like crazy, right? So
Yeah, but the matchups.
it's hard to say.
That was the only question.
It's all matchups. Great. So thanks for coming on, guys. It's been a pretty good show, long show, 90 minutes. But thanks for joining us, and I guess have a good one.
Good night.